I have one phone call with Sonny. He would say, like, dude, I think I'm gonna quit. I don't think my stuff's good. To be honest, even nowadays, I look at my stuff and I think it's pretty terrible. We're both pretty much broke with not the best futures ahead of us. It's always failed. It's always been a flop. So don't do it. Don't do the mistake that I continually make today. It's because of his current level of fame and success, it's easy to have tall poppy syndrome and want to cut those people back down to size. Alright guys, first question is probably a version of the most common question I ever get asked. Justin H says, what is the most challenging scene you've had to record? And I think there's a few ways to answer this question. Tough in terms of physically challenging or just stuff going wrong. And then there's of course what I think most people mean, which is what is the hardest thing you've had to eat? So I'll go one at a time. The hardest scene or shoot in general that I've ever had to record was in General Nakar, Philippines, shooting the Mad Honey episode. That was really tough because it was just insane. It was raining, I was sick, I was tired, and everything was going wrong. Rain kept coming in, we had to call off the shoot. We trekked all the way to the top of the mountain just for our fire to be put out by the rain. And I'm just praying because this storm really looks like it's coming in yet again. I kept having the mental disappointment of thinking that first the shoot was gonna happen and we were gonna be able to get the Mad Honey, and then the next moment it being crushed and we weren't gonna get it. And that all combined with just my physical state at the time made it by far the hardest shoot I've ever had to do. Luckily we were able to pull through and get the Mad Honey. It's probably one of my proudest moments in terms of shoot. In terms of the hardest thing to eat, it's pretty much always anything that's alive. A lot of people think that it's sort of really gross mental foods like rat and like pug, but to be honest, I've eaten so much of that stuff at this point that as long as it's cooked, it kind of just looks like food. But live creatures obviously do not. Anything that is squirming within your chopsticks as you hold it is incredibly hard. The live fish that I've eaten in the north of Vietnam with Sonny on the Best Ever Food Review show to this day is one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. Okay, come on.
You don't have to do it.
I'm f***ing doing this shit, man. Oh, it's kicking. Don't move.
Don't think about it. Just give it one firm bite to kill it. Is it swimming in your mouth?
Oh man, I'm never doing that again.
Andrew, well done. Well done. Oh my God. Throw it back in.
Realistically though, I think the hardest thing has been the giant Asian hornets, AKA murder hornet larvae. This just has all of the gross factors mixed into one. They're sort of alien looking, they have large pulsating bodies, they have a gush because they're an insect when you eat them, and even worse, to sort of top all of this off was the noise that they were making. You could see these larvae still gnawing at their hornet nest, at their hives. Everything just kind of combined into one of the most skin crawling, hair stand on your skin type feelings. Oh my God. Whoa. Really something that I don't look forward to eating again. That was pretty gross. They are gross looking creatures, and the larvae are, that's really, really tough to eat. Many people thought pag would be so hard to eat that I even faked the first video. So many people thought that I had to go back to the Philippines and eat it again a second time just to prove that I ate the damn thing. But honestly, if I gotta tell you the truth, it really wasn't that hard. It just looked like fried chicken and it tastes like fried chicken. When you see it fried up like that on your plate, it's just not that hard. I think pretty much anybody could do it. Live animals, way harder. A lot of people often ask me, is there anything I wouldn't eat? And I mean, that's kind of crazy. There's a lot of shit I wouldn't eat. I would never eat anything that's endangered. I probably wouldn't eat any weird stuff that doesn't have a real cultural connection to it. I'm not sure that I would ever really eat dog. It is something that I've thought about doing in a video for some time because I do like that mental struggle, the connection with why people do what is the unthinkable in the West. Something I wrestle with. I just think that there's not a great way to do that video. If you want to see it, let me know in the comments. All right, next up, travel related questions. I get a ton of different related travel questions, so I'm gonna answer them all, hopefully, or a version of them all in this little segment here. Angie James asks, what's a big adventure that you haven't been on that you would love to go on? Sort of like, what's your dream adventure? And I think there are a few places that I would really, really love to go back to, but if you're saying what's new, then there's this. Probably my favorite trip that I've ever been on was my trip to Mongolia with Sonny. I just think it is just such an amazing, fascinating country. So much of it seems so untouched. It's so unique. Everything about it I just absolutely loved. I would love to go back to Mongolia, but it's very expensive. And considering you're saying something new, then actually I would kind of like to consider going along the steps, continuing from Mongolia, going into Kazakhstan, something like that. Something with that same nomadic Mongolian vibe, that would be a real dream for me. Also, going to the Philippines in Tawi-Tawi and experiencing life with the Bajau and the Tusong and the Samar, that was probably one of the best things I've ever done in my life. And so I'm very interested in that kind of culture. I'd like to approach it from another angle though perhaps, and visit the Bajau people in Borneo, Malaysia, Indonesia, that sort of area of remote islands. Edward asks, would I ever consider leaving the jungle and heading to a big city like New York City? And I mean, as you know, Edward, I am going to New York City later this year, but would I ever live there? I don't think so. I don't think I could ever live in like a large US city, just like I couldn't really live in a major Australian city. Cities like that, to me, I just kind of find them a little bit boring at this stage of my life. I've got to admit, I like the sort of raw energy and pace of Asia. I like Asian cities, or I like the peaceful countryside. Suburbs, or even more westernized cities, not my jam, not right now. Relatedly, Peng Spirit asks what attracted me originally to Southeast Asia, and it's sort of related to all that. Everything, the noise, the chaos, the food, the atmosphere, the heat, it's just wild here. You are never bored. I think that Southeast Asia is one of the best places in the world to live. It's incredibly affordable. It's a great place to start a business. Pretty much, I love everything about this place. I think more people should look into moving to Southeast Asia. It is crazy to me that it is not more popular. Okay, Angie James again asks, have you or your cameramen ever found yourselves in a particularly bad or hostile position with a tribe or tribal members of a community that you were filming with? And how did you get out of that situation or diffuse that situation? Luckily, no. Like, we pretty much always have some kind of contact there that we've set up the trip with, or we've contacted ahead of time. So in general, I find that people, especially around Southeast Asia, are incredibly nice, incredibly friendly. When we visited Tawi-Tawi, many of my friends who are Filipino warned me not to go. It's too dangerous. Western people get kidnapped there. I've never found any friendlier people on earth. That was completely bad advice. In general, I think as long as you have kind of a local that's showing you around, you're generally pretty fine. One thing I would say is we have numerous times run into different problems dealing with police and authorities in filming locations. That's just one of the downsides, I think, of filming in some of the more chaotic places around the world. That's the closest thing. And how did I get past those? Money. Usually money. They also ask if I've ever been choppered out of a situation, and luckily no, I don't usually do anything that's that dangerous. I do a lot of motorbike trips, but I've never had a serious motorbike crash, definitely not whilst I'm filming. Okay, ANS Adventures asks, what advice would you give to someone just starting out on a YouTube channel? I would say that pretty much all of the best advice is already out there, and you should follow it, which I think is what most people don't do. So get out there, listen to every Mr. Beast interview, listen to every MKBHD interview, just soak up as much of what is out there as possible.
So it just like helps you grow exponentially way quicker, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does.
All that being said, these are some things that I've stolen that were, I think, especially important to me and finally finding success with this version of my channel now. And they are this. Sonny would always tell me to not miss a week. And the second piece of advice that is one that Mr. Beast often gives is that make sure with each video you're improving something. It doesn't have to be something absolutely huge. It could just be like a little bit of a different style of thumbnail, or you scripted the introduction a little bit more. You put a bit more time into the pre-production of that video. Anything. With every video you should be trying something new or trying to improve it. The reality is that at the beginning you're gonna suck. You might think it's good. I don't think my stuff's good. To be honest, even nowadays I look at my stuff and I think it's pretty terrible. But the fact that you're forced, because of your weekly schedule or whatever the schedule is, to put out something each and every week, and because you're also ensuring that you're trying to in some way improve it, it just has that snowball effect that within 6 months, within 12 months, you're very likely a way better YouTuber than how you started out. Those two pieces of advice in unison, I think, were the most effective things that really helped me get my channel to what they are today. I don't necessarily think you need to make it a weekly release. It could be bi-weekly, it could be once a month, something, but just hold yourself to a schedule, because you're not going to want to put your stuff out at the beginning, and by holding yourself to a schedule, I think that's the most important thing. It really forces you to get something done because you have a deadline. We Hate the Cold asks, what's the #1 thing you've learned in the story finding and filming process that you would tell yourself if you were going to start again? If you're talking specifically about the story finding process, I would say, if I would go all the way back to the start, I would reiterate to myself the #1 most important thing when finding a story is there a thumbnail and is there a hook? I think there's so many interesting things out there that I would love to film, that I would love to share on YouTube, but I just cannot for the life of me think of the correct thumbnail and hook. And whenever I've tried to cheat that rule and put something out anyway, it's always failed. It's always been a flop. So don't do it. Don't do the mistake that I continually make today. I would go back in time, I would tell myself, dude, don't cheat. Always start with something you know is a rock solid thumbnail and hook. It just makes the rest of your life so much easier. When did you decide to stop making power bank reviews and start with documentaries? And did you get any advice from Sonny? By the way, keep up the amazing content. Thanks, bro. There's actually a few versions of the Sonny side question. How did you meet Sonny? What advice does he give you? All that kind of stuff. And there's also a couple of versions of the when did you pivot to this sort of food, travel related content. So I will try to answer a couple of those now. Around about a year ago, maybe longer, I went on a trip with Sonny to Australia. And in that trip, I had the epiphany that I have whenever I go on a trip with Sonny, and that is, what the hell am I doing with my life? Why am I not doing the same thing? It's always the hardest thing that I do every year, and it is always the most rewarding thing that I do every single year. And previously, I've always told myself that it was too hard and that it was too much. And I think that this time, I just kind of realized, like, something being really, really hard is a really shitty reason to not do it. In fact, often the hardest, most challenging things are the most rewarding, and that's what you should be dedicating your life to. And so, yeah, I just kind of made the decision that I wanted to make other documentary related content. If you go back on my channel, the earliest videos you'll currently see are not power bank related videos, those you'll find on another channel. You'll find videos on documentaries regarding watches and the Vietnam War. And for whatever reason, I'm just a watch guy. I've loved watches for most of my life, and I always get obsessed with tiny little niches. And so initially when I started to broaden out my content, that's the angle that I went for.
And critically, it's waterproof. I mean, I wouldn't go swimming in this thing, but it does say that it's waterproof.
And then I had a phone call with Sonny where he said to me, dude, what the hell are you doing? Take advantage of his channel. Take advantage of the format with which people like watching me already, which is something to do with food and travel and culture. And so sort of him giving me a little bit of a push in the right direction, I think steered me towards this, and I'm really happy that he did. Stella asks, I'm just wondering if there's any specific plan on what the channel will be focusing on in terms of content, or if it's still sort of in the experimental stage. Well, Stella, I would say that it is definitely still in the experimental stage, but that I'm narrowing it down. I'm getting a little bit closer to learning what kind of content I like to film and which kind of content you guys like to watch. And so right now, here's where I'm at. I sort of know that I'm in the food, culture, travel space in general, but I have a little bit more though of a documentary, vlogging, docu-vlogging, or cinematography, cine-vlogging type vibe. So mix those things all together, and that's kind of where I'm at right now. I know that's not the most concrete answer, but we're getting kind of close, right? It's some kind of YouTuber anthropology. More Best Ever Food Review Show asks, how did you meet Sonny side? So here's the deal, Sonny and I go pretty far back. I like to say, although I'm not sure how true it is, that I talked Sonny into moving to Vietnam. I'm sure that I'm at least partly responsible for it. At the time, Sonny was still working on as part of a film production crew in Korea. He was on a trip to shoot his early episodes of Best Ever Food Review Show in Vietnam. I was working at a startup, and I, at least in part, convinced him to join that startup. Now, that startup is now defunct and fell apart. But for many years there, we would live in the same house. We would wake up very early every morning and work out on the same street gym that had dog meat being grilled on the sidewalk. And that meat smell would waft through the windows, and we would talk about everything, live, YouTube, and I would give a lot of feedback to Sonny at that time. He was often very willing to quit at the time, if you would believe it or not. I mean, it was really tough, the stage that we were both at. We were both pretty much broke, and I would try my best to encourage him. He would say, like, dude, I think I'm gonna quit. And I would say stuff to him like, I mean, dude, what else are you gonna do? You don't have any other options.
I settled on Korea with 2,000 bucks in my bank account. I lived in a crappy rooftop apartment, almost no money, definitely not enough money to go back to the US if I wanted to. Trying to figure out how to make money in a country where I don't speak the language and I don't know how anything works there.
And I believed in him right from the start. Going from being a pretty much broke English teacher, overweight in Korea, to having the single largest food channel on YouTube on earth is nothing short of extraordinary.
I wasn't prepared for myself and the channel to end up here, but I enjoy and accept the responsibility of that.
And I think nowadays, actually, a lot of people don't give Sonny the respect that he deserves because of his current level of fame and success.
What do people hate about Sonny's side? And they gave me bullet points. They'd be like, oh, he's like too energetic, or sometimes he comes off as disrespectful, or things like that. That's feedback given by the nature of like how our show is done, where if I gave a more calm show and a more like super deferential show, people would say it's too slow. So then you just have opposite feedback.
It's easy to have tall poppy syndrome and want to cut those people back down to size, but I would really like to stress to anybody watching this video that nobody deserves it more than Sonny. No one works harder, no one grinded through more adversity, and nobody has given more to the people around him. He's helped pull me out of some really pretty dire situations many times, and absolutely everything that I know about YouTube came from him at some way, shape or form. I either learned it on one of his trips or through one of the many questions that I fire at him every single week. There is no one that is more helpful and that is willing to share more time with me right now growing this channel. So every bit of support that you're able to give to those guys is also support for me. All right, guys, that is it for this video. Back to the normal schedule next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for getting me here to 100,000 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you. Goodbye.